Hi, good evening, comrades. Palestine is hard for me to speak about. I used to live there for about 2 years. And it was a time of my life that I'm really grateful for, just everything that I learned, all the things that I was able to do to try and help out. But, you know, I had to leave eventually. And one of the reasons why I left, among many different reasons, but one of the reasons why I left is because I came to understand in a very real way that you can really only kind of understand after you know people for a couple years, that almost everyone I knew, everyone I worked with, everyone around me suffered from PTSD. And it's a thing when you know someone for, you know, a year and a half, and then all of a sudden they like show you where they were shot in their body, you know, and they never mentioned it before. Or they'll tell you stories about what has happened to their families or what happened to them. But it was a pretty hard thing to come into and to understand. But, you know, for all of the people here who were at the film screening on Saturday, I'm sure that you got a sense of that. You know, it was a film called Killing Gaza by Max Blumenthal and Dan Cohen. They came here to screen it, but I'm sure that people got a sense of it, you know, and it was a long movie and it was a painful movie to watch. But at the same time, it did impart that sort of message to people that, like, people in Gaza are, you know, traumatized. And I mean, there are lots of traumatized people in the Middle East, especially after imperialism's rampage in the past decades, completely endless. And the trauma continues and is made fresh every time a person is displaced from their home, every time someone buries a family member, every time a worker is sold into slavery in Libya, every time a child in Yemen starves to death in their mother's arms, or a woman in Iraq or Syria is raped by U.S. Contras, the trauma continues and is made fresh. But there is something about the Palestinian struggle for national liberation that continues to unify and inspire anti-imperialist and anti-colonial movements across the world. It is international in its orientation, with such a large diaspora, of course, almost 10 million refugees living outside of the borders. And it's against imperialism, white supremacy, and settler colonialism. And it is a sublime cause, one of steadfastness and struggle until victory, which is why, last month, against all odds, hundreds of thousands of Gazans marched unarmed towards settler colonial occupiers who cut down thousands of men, women, children, elders, people from across all strata of Gazan society. The Zionists aim mainly for the legs, and in Gaza this means amputations. Their hospitals are almost not operational. Otherwise, they shoot for the head, or they bombard resistors with batteries of tear gas. But this doesn't stop the resistance. On May 14th, Fadi Abu Saleh, 29, had already lost both of his legs to sniper bullets before he was murdered by a sniper's bullet to the head last month. On May 14th, Leila Al-Ghandour was 8 months old when she was suffocated to death by Israeli tear gas. And on June 1st, just a few days ago, Razzan al-Najjar, 21, was wearing her nurse's uniform with her hands in the air, running towards a wounded person on the ground when she was shot in the chest and murdered. There's an excellent story in the newspaper this week by Susan Abu Hawa on Razzan's case. I highly recommend everyone read it. These are just 3 names, though, of the 123 people murdered during the Great March of Return in Gaza. Israel has injured more than 13,000. Not one Zionist casualty, not one. And the New York Times calls this sort of massacre clashes or riots, but never what they actually are: righteous and courageous resistance against a machine bent on the total destruction of Palestine. I said earlier that I left because a lot of my friends had PTSD, and that was just one reason. Lots of different reasons, but you know, the main reason was that I knew that I could be more helpful trying to end the occupation from the belly of this beast, understanding that it wasn't just one issue, but it was a multifaceted issue of imperialism and white supremacy and U.S. hegemony. Besides their own indomitable strength, international solidarity is what Palestinians depend on. And the world has responded. Here in New York, there have been several actions since arch-racist Donald Trump insisted on moving the U.S. Embassy to occupied Jerusalem, and there will be more to come. Tomorrow is Al-Quds Day, which Bill informs me was a product of the Iranian Revolution, so. And And we will be meeting at Times Square to carry the slogan that Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. The rally will be from 4 to 6, and at 6 we will march to the Israeli mission at 42nd Street and 2nd Avenue. There have also been 2 remarkable rallies and marches in Bay Ridge within the Palestinian community, others in Manhattan. And this past Sunday was possibly, at least for me, it was one of the most difficult, which was our protest contingent against the Israel Day Parade. And I cried, seeing the children being marched down Fifth Avenue by their parents, not understanding their own parents were celebrating while children their age were being cut down in Gaza. And we called to them, your parents are lying to you. But this message, I feel, is already getting across. It was heartening to see so few youth, actually, at this parade. There were plenty of people 35 and up, plenty of people 15 years of age and younger, but there was a very noticeable gap in the people who were there at this parade. This generation of Jewish people is exposed to the crimes of Israel as never before. And instead of the Israel Day Parade, they are instead chaining themselves to the Israeli consulate in Boston, drenching Israeli flags in blood in Philadelphia, fighting for BDS, and taking other direct actions against the apartheid regime that so cynically claims to represent them. And it is this changing of minds, this raising of consciousness, that helps take the wind out of the sails of the settler colonial regime. It can seem an endless war that runs uphill. The coffins and the bodies carried through the streets of Gaza are all fresh scars. The sickening torture that the people of Gaza withstand can seem gargantuan in scope, but their will to survive and their struggle to win is what should sustain us here as well. Whenever I think about how tired we are, how endless our own battles seem, I think about the people of Gaza, what they're going through, the 2 hours of power a day, no working hospitals, no clean water, horrific conditions, marching into machine gun nests, basically, unarmed. And I think about their courage to keep living and fighting no matter what. So thank you.